Good morning, brothers and sisters. Good morning. Come on, make the house sound full. Good morning, brothers and sisters. Good morning. How are you guys doing today? Good. Welcome to the campus of California State University, Dominguez Hills. I'm Dr. Anthony Asadullah Samad. I am the director of the Mervyn Dymally Institute, which is here on the campus of Cal State Dominguez Hills. I'm also the host of the Urban Issues Forum of Greater Los Angeles. And we welcome you to the 2020 Stay Woke panel. Now let's have a conversation real quick while our panel makes their way to the stage. Let's have a conversation about what Stay Woke means. Stay Woke is more than just a moniker. We talk about our community like you have to have your head on a swivel, like you have to always be aware. And so certainly that's some street play. But in terms of voting, it means much more than that. There is going to be so much of a focus on the national politics in 2020, okay? We know the national referendum is to dump Trump. But in the process, we tend to ignore state elections, county elections, local elections. And we intend to ignore the ballot initiatives that represent the change in the quality of life in our communities. And so today we have three of the most prominent elected officials in our community, where we have an opportunity to not just talk about voting, but how we become voting sophisticates. The Merv Dymally Institute last year released a study, a policy study on constituency awareness. And what the study said is, while we know certain elected officials' names, and while we know to vote, many times when it comes to ballot initiatives, we don't know what to vote for. Or particularly in the case of the state of California, who registered 800,000 new voters 60 days before election, they are vulnerable to low information messaging or being tricked into voting for something that they didn't intend to vote for. So let us get started. Let us introduce our panel. First, we will introduce the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors for the 2nd District. That's the district that the university is in, so this is his home park, so to speak. And he is someone who I've known for 40 years. I consider him a friend, sometime an adversary, but it's all good love. Sometimes you gotta slam your little brother, and he slams me from time to time, but every now and then I get back and slam him back. So I'd like to introduce my brother, Supervisor Mark Ridley-Thomas. Please welcome him to the stage. Another brother that I've known for 30 years, we were just having a conversation backstage about the first time we met when I was an ACB president, and he was working for County Supervisor Yvonne Burke at the time, and he was with Nate. He was with Nate, and we went to them for some stamps to respond to a mailer, and we've been friends ever since. And this is a history-making brother, because he, to my knowledge, and I know you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, is the only black man to have served as Speaker of the California Assembly and President of the Los Angeles City Council. So show him some love, Los Angeles City Council President Herb Wesson. This next brother I've also known since he was 19 years old. I was a little older, a couple years older. But he has always been a person who put the people first. I got mad love for him. He is one of the biggest supporters of the university because he's an alum of the university. He's also one of the biggest supporters of the Mervyn Dymally Institute. You know, I call him my defender because he will fight, and he has fought, and he continues to fight. And he not only continues to fight for us, but he also continues to fight for black males. He also continues to fight for social equity in this new movement of legalized marijuana. He continues to fight for black males. He's been on the state commission for the status of black males since he was in the assembly, and I'm proud to call him a personal friend. Please welcome State Senator Steve Bradford. That's my boss today, Dr. Parham. Karen Slade, she's telling me what to do. Can you guys move down a little bit so, you know, folk can see you? You know how you guys act when you in class and you sitting in the back row. You know you ain't paying attention. So y'all move up a little bit. And so what I want to do is I want the people to get to know the three of you, because black men need to know black men. You know, they see y'all on television, they read y'all in the paper, but they really don't get a chance to feel you until they get a chance to feel you. So I'd like the three of you to make a 3-minute opening statement. I know I'm taking a risk here, but, you know, 3 elected officials with a microphone, but y'all can count to 3. That's how much time y'all give us to talk when we come before the horseshoe. Y'all be like 3 minutes, 1 minute. So what we're going to do is give you guys a chance to let the people get to feel you, and then we'll start asking some questions. So, Brother Steve is going to go first.
I guess so. Good morning. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Steve Bradford. I grew up just a little ways from here in Gardena. My family's been in Gardena now for 50 years. I was honored to serve as the first African-American city councilman in the city of Gardena for 12 years. Then I moved on to serve in the California State Assembly for a little over 5.5 years, and now I'm in my first term as a senator. But my concern is public safety, and each and every one of us who is sitting up here, we've been engaged in public service, I should say, and as well as public safety for 40+ years, dealing with the issues that impact people that look like us on a daily basis. It's key that we stay engaged and let our voices be heard. So this is about public service for me. They say you run for office for 2 reasons: to be something or to do something. I want to do something. Wesson has done something. Ridley-Thomas has done something, and that's why we do this, not to be something, but to do something to improve our community. So I'm honored that you have taken time today to join us in this discussion about staying woke, because we're at a critical time in our country. It's probably the most critical time since the 50s and the civil rights movements during the 60s, what we're facing as not only black people, but as Americans. So I'm honored to be here today, honored to join the council president as well as the supervisor, Mark Ridley-Thomas, individuals who have served on both levels of government, both local and state, and hear from them today as well as hear from you. So thank you.
Give him a round of applause. So y'all wasn't feeling him for real? Give your brother some love. All right.
Anyway, I may be the council president, but my name is Herb. I've always just been Herb, and that's what I want you to call me. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and I came here to find myself. At a young age, I heard a wise man say that the 2 most important days in any person's life is the day that you're born and the day that you discover why you were born. And for me, it's always been about helping us get opportunities that other folk don't want to have us, don't want to see us have. So for me, that's what it's all about. I'm an ordinary guy that's been blessed to have some extraordinary jobs, and I'm just very excited to be here with you to give you an opportunity to see who I really am. Because if you read the newspapers, sometimes they say I'm a bad fella, and I don't think that I am. I've loved one woman my entire life. I've been married for 38 years. I got four kids and 4 grandkids. That's who I am. Anyway, thank you for having me today. I am wiry, you know. I'm a little tough. I'm like a tough chicken neck.
Thank you, Brother President. Brother Supervisor, you got a story to tell?
Well, thanks very much. Delighted to be here. Native of Los Angeles, born in South LA. Been here all my life. Feel privileged for having the opportunity of being here. Often I wake up in the morning and say that the Lord has smiled on me. Because it didn't have to be this way. A lot of things have happened over the arc of my life that showed me how fortunate in many ways I am. And the only thing I know what to do with that, Steve and Herb, Anthony, is to try to leverage those experiences for the good of the greater community. And that's essentially why I'm in public service. I believe in servant leadership. I believe that the potential for us to elevate the quality of life for the least of these is our mandate. It is an imperative. And to the extent that that is the case, I have had a tremendous opportunity to speak the language of empowerment, to speak truth to power, and to enjoy incredible support from a range of people in all of the seats that I have held over the past 30 years, and at the 10 years prior to that at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was training ground for me, that helped me to learn a lot of things from those who had put their lives on the line and made a difference. And so, Dr. Parham, I'm pleased to be here with you today to just acknowledge the fact that this university is simply trying to represent. And when someone is trying to represent and is representing, I think I have an obligation to embrace it and lift it up. So thanks for the opportunity. Glad to tell you more of my story as we go through the conversation. Mine is not unlike, in some ways, that of my colleague to the right. Been married 40 years this past month. And someone should give Avis Ridley-Thomas someone probably should give Avis Ridley-Thomas a Medal of Valor. And I was delivering a sermon one morning, and the woman got up and said that, give her a medal, right in the middle of my remarks. And so, yeah, it was a Baptist church, but that's beside the point. Father of 2 wonderful sons, a grandson and a granddaughter in the oven on the way out. So I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And this was an important foundation to understanding that elected officials are not removed from our community. They come from our community. These brothers came from the streets, okay? I mean, somebody just did not pick these brothers out of the sky and say, you're going to represent the 2nd District, you're going to represent the 10th District, you're going to represent the 35th. You know, these brothers have come through the ranks, and the people have said, okay, you have represented us on this level, we need you to represent us on this level, okay? And so what it does, a personal introduction desensitizes you to the nonsense that you read, you know, and, you know, if you let other people tell our story, they will convince you that the people who are for your best interests are not in your interest at all. And so we have to do a fantastic job of making sure that we become woke in that sense, that we become sophisticated enough to understand when we're being fed disinformation and misinformation. So now let's get to the questions. And I promised all three of them that I would throw the ball straight up the center of the plate. You either knock it out or you miss it. And to me, the most critical question that I have for all three elected officials is, how did so many damn black people end up on the streets of LA? Now, homelessness is a problem nationwide, but not like in Los Angeles. And we have passed 2 bond measures to try to fix this, and the number went up. And black people are 8% of the population and 40% of the homeless. And so I know the state has kicked in some money, the county has kicked in some money, the city has kicked in some money. Who wants to take this question first?
Well, here, I'll jump on it first. I mean, one of the reasons why I think the problem is as bad as it is today is because when you first started to notice homelessness, the highest percentage of individuals on the street were brothers. Right. And people just didn't care. I think that it is not by accident that, and Steve has been a big supporter, but that 2 of the brothers that you see on the stage today led the effort to come up with $1.2 billion to build housing for the city of LA, which is something that I quarterbacked. And then this fella here, Mark, in a matter of months after that, with all of the odds against this passing, put on the ballot Measure H, which gave us over $300+ million a year to provide the services, because it doesn't make sense to build facilities and not have the services. So we recognize this, and we're doing everything that we can to focus attention on this, and in a way that we've been the tip of the spear. Now, the city and the county we worked like hell, and last year we put over 20,000 people that were on the street in housing together. But the numbers went up. So what that tells us is not so much that our plan is not working. It's time for us to double down. It's time for us to tighten up, not lighten up. And it also tells us that we have to have resources spent in the beginning before people become homeless in the first place. So we are going to get a handle on this situation, but I just wanted to throw out there that we're related to the 2 measures that has created billions of dollars, that the supervisor and I have been in lockstep in leading that charge.
Okay. Give him a round of applause, because that is a true statement. But let's flip the other side of that coin, and maybe you could take this one, Supervisor. Come on, Supervisor. The reason why the number went up is because there's not a cap on rents. Our people are being evicted in the streets. Okay. Through the absence of policies that allow new developers to not set aside affordable housing or not build enough of it, or to allow new owners, when houses are sold, to immediately raise rents on folk. The only area that I have seen that have been able to head this off is Santa Monica. They're not going to let you price them out and put them on the street. But everywhere else in the Southland now is Culver City. Culver City has a growing homeless problem because folk are buying it in Culver City and then doubling the rents. So let's talk about what impact the absence of rent caps or rent controls has on this homeless problem. You want to take it?
Yeah, Big Money
Is that big?
does
money?
what he always does,
Oh, I see the hat.
which is to try to steal my line before I get it out. He's been doing that since 2008, but it's all right. Keep representing. Give him a hand, won't you? Big Money Grip
Big
is
Money
in the
Grip.
house. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, since you got an applause, that means you don't have an opportunity to come and testify on Tuesday at the board. Cut me some slack. Yeah, I already know. A couple of things are worth mentioning, if I can go back to the original question just for a moment.
Sure.
We've done a lot, as is indicated by the council president. And no one could have convinced me that we would be in a place where we are today that in some ways suggests that the circumstances are worse now than they were 3 years ago when we lifted the bat to try to roll on this. To have a 12% uptick in homelessness in the county of Los Angeles and a 16% uptick in the city of Los Angeles, you just couldn't have convinced me that such is the case. So why then is it the case? Anthony puts his finger right on it. It's related to economic insecurity. It's related to financial stress. It's related to the rents. It's related to affordable housing and the lack thereof. Just know that there are 516,000 units short of affordable housing in the county of Los Angeles. I shall repeat that, 516,000 units short. Therefore, we are in a market that lends itself to price gouging, rent gouging. And so all of what we have to do now is to check the rent gougers, to stabilize rents, to provide eviction protection. In other words, we're going to put forward a substantial amount of support in terms of the right to counsel. If renters have legal protections, that is to say, someone who will represent them, landlords will not as quickly or as easily evict them. Do you follow me? So all of that is what needs to happen, in addition to caps. Now, I will be as candid with you as I can. I'm not a big fan of rent control, as it were, but it's necessary to correct the challenges that we're contending with. I want to say that again. All things being equal, I'd say let the market deal with this. But the market is not handling this in a way that's causing people to live with a level of dignity and purpose rather than living on the streets of our city and county. Therefore, it is necessary, and this is where government intervention is warranted. When the market doesn't take care of it, that's the reason for having government, to provide regulation so that people don't live in squalor. Do you follow me? I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, I'm not trying to run up on landlords and so forth. How many landlords are in the room? How many of you own property? Anthony, raise your hand. You know how much property you raise. It's nothing to apologize for, but we have to be fair-minded. Now, let me just make this other quick point, which was, why is it that so many African Americans are homeless? And the reason reduces itself to one word: racism. We, for the first time, the ad hoc committee of the organization we know as LASA, did a study on the issue of why so many black people are being homeless. And they did an extensive 9-month review, and I want to make sure that you get that. Dr. Cropper here will help you find your way to it. Go to the LASA website and look for the ad hoc committee on black people experiencing homelessness. This is really important. It lays it all out. It's disproportionate. Anthony gave you the data. 9% of the population in LA County is black, 40% of the homeless people are black. They call that disproportionality. But it's a function of disparity in healthcare, it's a function of discrimination in employment, and the whole list of things that we know intimately. But I will end on this point. The issue of homelessness, in my view, is the defining moral issue of our time. I had a conversation with the county coroner the other day, the medical examiner, that said there are more people in the county of Los Angeles who die as a result of homelessness on the streets of this county than those who are victims of homicide.
66 in office, something like that?
No, it's 3 per day.
So that's 90.
Yeah. So, and it's been trending upwards. That's why I said you couldn't have told me that it would be getting this bad. It's the 2018 numbers were 918. The 2017 number were 813. The 2019 numbers are expected to be like 1,015 plus. It's trending upwards. Now you would think intuitively, and I'll relinquish the mic, that they would mirror, watch me closely on this, the disproportionality of African Americans, for an example, in homelessness, but that's not the case. The majority, the plurality of those who are dying on the streets of Los Angeles happen to be white. The data is important to understand. Dr. Crouch, is owing to opioids, meth. Look, don't get mad, get data, all right? In other words, you need to know how these numbers are distributing. It is my concern that now that we know who's dying, it's going to be interesting to see what the response is. Do you hear me? Mm-hmm. I'll leave it at that.
Steve, you want to hit that? You want to hit that, or the next question is for you? I said, do you want to hit that, or?
I'll just piggyback quickly because I think the council president and supervisor touched on all those issues that are affecting homelessness, and racism is at the forefront. But it's something that we did in the California legislature 8 years ago, and we ended redevelopment. And it was a tool that was available to help developers underwrite property, land, in order to build affordable housing. And the record needs to state, I voted for that. I voted for it with the promise that there was going to be $7 billion available to the state that never came to fruition. And there were only 2 legislators in the Senate when we were hoping to kill the bill in the Senate who had the courage to vote against it. One was Bob Huff out of Orange County, and the other one was Rod Wright, the former senator who represented this district. And they said no to Jerry Brown, but unfortunately, it was enough votes to get out. And that has, it has prevented developers from underwriting dirt and being able to build affordable housing. But something you can look forward to, there's a piece of legislation that's making its way through the Assembly and the Senate. Next Friday will be the end of our legislative year. It's a piece of legislation that has a rent cap in it. It caps rents at 5% per year plus CPI, not to exceed 10% rent increases. They initially wanted 7, we brought it down to 5. It's going to have just cause for evictions. You will have your day in court to adjudicate if it's a fair eviction. It's going to be safeguards for tenants, making sure that they're just not moved out as we see. But we also need to change the paradigm, as the supervisor stated. I, too, am not a fan of rent control because many of the folks who own apartment buildings are people like you. They're mom and pop folks who bought these buildings 20, 30 years ago to pay for their kids' college, to be their retirement, and not to gouge people. If you talk to the average apartment owner, they says, I'd rather have a reliable tenant that doesn't tear up my building, who can be there for 10 years and I'll never raise the rent versus wanting to raise the rent every year on somebody, and they tearing up my building and they're moving out shortly after that. So we have to change the face of who these apartment owners are, but we have to also recognize that there are corporations who are coming into our community and buying up these buildings and moving people out. And the gentrification is real, and we have to address that. And you see it throughout all of LA County, where corporations and a lot of foreign corporations are coming up, not only buying apartment buildings, but buying single-family residents as well and raising the rent. So we have some safeguards that are working their way through the legislature, and hopefully we'll get it done next Friday, and the governor will sign it.
Mr. Moderator, if we could, Steve brings up a very critical point. In order to build affordable housing, you need to have incentives. Now, the Community Redevelopment Agency gave us the tool to do that. Now, there were abuses, and Governor Brown came in and he eliminated that, but we really need to look at creating a more narrowly focused ability for us to incentivize developers to come in and build the types of housing that we need. Since we don't have that now, you take individuals like the supervisor and myself. One of the things that we've done is we have identified government-owned property in our districts, okay? And in my district alone, I've got like 6 projects. So I eliminate the cost of the property. I make developers compete to come in to build affordable housing and housing for homeless as well. But that's creativity that we shouldn't have to do. But I mean, moving forward, we're gonna have to identify every piece of property owned by the cities, the county, the school board, the state, and then work together so that we can use that property to try to create affordable housing. And getting back to the thing about some kind of program in the state, I wouldn't care if it was just defined for economically depressed areas or for areas that were going through gentrification. So I mean, we can narrow some kind of redevelopment agency to address a lot of the concerns that we're having now. But when that tool was taken away, it all fell back on our creativity, and then it gave the market, like the supervisor said, the ability to just be financially driven. And we had nothing to offset that with other than our wits and our creativity.
Yeah, this is a critical point. I hope you don't mind us stand on this for a second. And that's why you have to pay close attention to what elected officials are doing in terms of accountability. It was disastrous for Jerry Brown to have engineered the dissolution of redevelopment. It was a gut punch to developing communities. In other words, you can't cause economic development to happen in the 10th district, in the 8th district, in the 9th district, just to think about it. You can't talk about it in the city of Carson. And frankly, in Culver City either. The redevelopment of Culver City was precisely that. It was owing to redevelopment dollars. All downtown Culver City benefited from that. When you took that off the table, you took that economic activity off the table, but more to the point, it took the building of affordable housing off the table. Because with each one of those deals, you had a 20% set aside for affordable housing. So when you begin to add up the amount of affordable housing that we've been missing, you can correlate that to the increase in the shortage of affordable housing in the state of California over the last decade. That rests at Jerry Brown's feet. And I'm not here to hammer him or bash him or point fingers. I'm just saying, as voters, somebody said here today, stay woke. You got to look at what people are doing and ask them what the thinking was behind it. and it did not justify wiping all of that out, because what it essentially said, in my view, is developing communities like those that some of us have represented over the arc of our career don't matter.
And if I could just piggyback, just real quick.
It's about the 15th piggyback now. Come on.
No,
We're
no,
gonna
no,
go-
but I'm just
go
saying,
ahead. No, I'm
to
just
follow
having
up on
fun.
what the
I'm
supervisor
having
said.
fun. Go ahead, Senator.
And highlight Jerry Brown. Jerry Brown was mayor of Oakland almost 20 years ago. And exactly, and the redevelopment and the growth in Oakland during his tenure was because of redevelopment. And for him to end it, we were all blown away, because the Oakland you see today wouldn't look like it if it wasn't for redevelopment.
That's a great point. Let's get to my second biggest peeve. Huh? Ward Connolly. This region is experiencing probably the biggest economic development boom in the nation. And some kind of way black men can't find work. And I recently visited London. I saw more black men working on construction sites in one day than I've seen in LA in 10 years. Now, there has to be some vehicle by which we are missing, because I know for a fact that the Latino community are able to take cats straight out of jail and put them on the construction sites, because I saw them do it at East LA College. We cannot seem to get black men in construction trades in sufficient numbers. I throw that out to the panel, and whoever wants to take it, but why can't we get black men employed at a significant level?
I'm going to answer that again and say racism. I chaired Senate Labor and Industrial Relations 2 years ago, and that was a challenge I put toward all organized labor. Why is it such a lacking of men of, well, African Americans, let's be clear, in all the building trades, all the skilled trades. And the issue was just raised just this week in Sacramento, where we have a $100 million project going on right across the street from the Capitol. We're building a new Capitol annex, and it's not one African American working on that project. And it hasn't been missed on a single person who walks into that Capitol every day to watch this construction site with these two giant cranes and see a city of people working, and you can't find one African American. That's why 2 years ago, when we were passing SB1, the gas tax, I asked Jerry Brown to make a commitment to supplier diversity. I put the language into the gas tax that clearly states now, out of the $5 billion that we're supposed to raise annually for construction of roads, highways, bridges, that a percentage of that money has to be afforded women-owned, minority-owned contractors, as well as labor force. Jerry Brown came to this campus 2 years ago and met with 200 plus African-American business people, and he made that commitment. It is in the statute right now, but we have to, again, get Caltrans to own up to it. We have a young lady by the name of Debbie Lumpkin, who's the Deputy Inspector General, and her job is to make sure that minorities get work in this space. But we can point to the new Ram Charger Stadium that's going on, being built right now in Inglewood. IBEW has done a great job in hiring formerly incarcerated young men, African-American men, and they're working on that site. But we can do better, and we need to do better.
You know, Steve, brings up a good point, and it's one thing for us to talk about this being racism. I think we all know that it is, but I'm tired of us crying about that. So we are partnering with the building trades to try to put in place programs that create apprentice programs so that you can now go by some of these new developments and see people that look like you working on them. We're also putting an emphasis where it relates to reentry, because we have so many brothers that are in jail. In fact, I think the supervisor about a month or two ago just opened a brand new center in Los Angeles that focuses on reentry. The carpenters, the brothers within the carpenters have taken it on themselves to create a apprenticeship program. So we're seeing changes occur. what we're doing in the city of Los Angeles, and it's not just construction jobs, it's all jobs. So we've created something that's called a targeted local hire. So all of the city departments have to give to us the entry-level jobs that are going to be coming up within their department. And then we work with an organization that makes sure that we can target certain communities and give those individuals an opportunity to apply for those jobs. And that's something that I'm working with Council Member Marquise Harris Dawson on. And it has proven to be successful, and we just need to put more emphasis in it and more funds in it. But I'd like to see us take this targeted local hire, because government still provides a pathway to the middle class. And we want to make sure that folks in our community can get on that pathway. And the only way that you can do that is that you identify entry-level jobs, and then you outreach to the various communities that have not had access to these jobs. So these are, again, guys, this ain't easy, and I'm not griping. I mean, I was born, I think, to try to help other people, but we have to be smart, we have to be systematic, and we have to be creative to do everything that we can to make sure that people like us get an opportunity to be in the game. And one of the things that we have to do as a people is, it's great to be emotional, but we got to put that emotion aside, and we got to be serious, like a doctor, when we're going forward to try to improve the relationships and the opportunities for us.
Brother President, and I want to earmark that point before the supervisor jumps in. Here is generally where the tension, the rub is with constituents and the elected officials. They say, damn, if y'all can't get us no work, then who can get us some work? You know, and while they see you putting your best effort forward, to many people, your best effort is never enough. And that's where the criticism comes in. You know, I mean, we feel that our elected officials and preachers should be able to do anything in our community to make it happen. And it's just not that way anymore. That's where the paradigm shift is. You know, folk have seen our program. It's like watching a rerun on television. Okay, this is where they're going to protest, and then this is where they're going to pack the council, and this is where they're going to tear up the street. You know, they have seen this before, and they have become desensitized to it. And so I just wanted to kind of, you know, put that in bullet point that, because while you guys are doing everything you could do, you know, the racism is overcoming this. But nobody wants to speak out on racism, at least not in the way we used to speak out in racism. Okay, Brother Supervisor, go ahead.
Well, a couple of things. One is, associate my remarks with that of the council president and the senator in terms of how insidious racism is, but we know that. And we need to engage this in a way that we can overcome. So what's our current reality? Math does matter. And so to the constituents who say that we can do better than what we're doing, you can't overcome the math. May I be more specific about that?
Yes.
So African Americans comprise some 16% of all arrests and 29% of California's state prison population. And 70% of people in Los Angeles County jails suffer from mental and physical illness. So some of this discussion, as you were hinting at, Dr. Samad, is a criminal justice reform discussion. You said that other ethnic groups can get their family members on the work site and get the jobs done. Math matters. For every one, do the math,
Right.
and you are up against those realities. Now, when you say tensions, then we get into the discussion about conflicts on the racial front, ethnic tensions. But I want the point of not becoming emotional about this, which is hard not to do when you're unemployed. You're going to be emotional, right? I just want to say math matters. And so we can offer progress. We cannot offer perfection. We can push, and I am not willing to accept that elected officials have done enough. I'm not willing to accept that we do all that we can do. My point of view is that we have to work harder and get the business handled. And so we need to provide more supports. At 3965 South Vermont, we just opened up a new facility called Doors. It's a reentry facility opportunity. We're flipping the script in terms of what traditional probation offices do. I want to invite you to go to that facility, the 3rd floor, and see what they're doing. The services are free: workforce development, education, health and mental health, resentencing and legal relief. All of that is there, brand new, off the chain, all right, with respect to what can happen. Now, if you want to break through, you need a little help. Anybody sometime need a little help? This is what that place is to do, to provide support. The criminal justice system is not designed to help. There's no way that you can explain incarceration and it comes out meaning help, right?
Exactly.
So reentry is about support. It's about help. It's about equipping people. And I'm proud of the fact that we have several departments that are there rolling up their sleeves and making that happen. Now, what I want to encourage you, your family members, and the whole range to take full advantage of that. We lay that program out because, and it's not, we opened up like, it's a couple of months ago, but it's already showing progress. I went to New York and saw what they were doing there. And I said, we can do it in Los Angeles better. And I believe that. It was 8 o'clock there, but it was 5 o'clock here. So I had 3 hours to get it together. You understand what I'm saying? We don't mess with the Knicks. We do the Clippers and the Lakers here. And so I'm just trying to make the point. New York had it going on. We've made it better. And I'd invite you to take full advantage of it because it has workforce implications and quality of life implications that we can exploit. Yeah, Herb, what's your home address? Thank you. 3965 South Vermont. You want a telephone number? 323-730-4468. 323-730-4468. This is the new reentry center. It's right across the street from where they're doing the new Lucas Museum, the big construction site, literally on the west side of the street, right? Just north of MLK, south of Exposition, all right? Right there. It's the new probation office, but it's redefined. Mary, were you there when we had the opening? All right. Yeah, so this is what's new and what's next. And Fox, you ought to go in there. There's something in there for you. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to ask the panel a couple more questions, then we're going to let the audience get in a couple questions. But we're going to finish when we're supposed to finish, which is 11:15. Let's go to the 2020 elections. and particularly I want to talk about the census. The state of California allocated $187 million for California to count. $187 million. You know how much the black community got on that? $400,000. $400,000. Somebody fell asleep on us on that. We're going to get that reallocated. We are working here at Dominguez and a couple of other places to get that reallocated. The purpose almost says that they don't want to count us. You know, they accept an undercount, well, we ain't going to be able to count everybody. We ain't going to be able to find all y'all, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But this is census suppression. In the same way we talk about vote suppression, this is count suppression. Yeah. And so I want to ask the panel, one, were you aware of this? And two, what will you do to make sure that, one, the African American community gets more money allocated for not only census education, but census counting and census outreach? Because when I heard that number, I was just flabbergasted that they would just play us like that. Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I'll try to address that. It's an issue that's been at the forefront of the Legislative Black Caucus since the beginning of the year to make sure that we were at the table. One thing that also we missed out on, and we've seen it, is having folks that look like us on the redistricting committee that determines what our congressional and our assembly and our Senate districts are. We didn't have a single African American on that, despite the Legislative Black Caucus challenging those appointments. We're still trying to address that, but we see it daily that we're not at the table, and it's important that we do get engaged, because African Americans, as Dr. Samad has stated, has been undercounted since we were brought to this country 400 years ago, when we were only 3/5 of a human being. And to make sure that we are counted means so much more than how many of us exist, but it means resources to your community from an educational standpoint, from a health perspective. I mean, it's vitally important that we have our numbers counted. So the Legislative Black Caucus is working closely with the redistricting committee as well as the census to get more money allocated, as Dr. Samad stated. Of the $187 million, to only get $400 million. And I'm not here to knock 400,000. And I'm not here to knock some of the traditional places, but over the years, where they sent the money was not the most effective way to use the money. And we're now trying to identify community-based organizations that will help us get this count done, as well as help us with the redrawing of these lines. But it needs to be organizations that are well-funded, but more importantly, well-organized to go out and achieve the task at hand, because right now we're being missed, and we're going to be missed on this census count if we don't let our voices be heard.
Yeah, and the city as well, we're trying to do what we can to make adjustments where it relates to how much money is being spent. Outreach is the key. I mean, if we do a poor job, we do poor outreach, we have poor counts, we get less resources. So this is always a fight, and I still think that it's early enough where we'll be able to rectify this. So I'm looking forward to working with the state representatives, county representatives, and city representatives to make sure that we get something that is respectable, so that we can go out and do the kind of job that the people want, need, and expect. And we're not going to lay down. We're not going to go quietly into the night on this one. I mean, you just can't say in an open forum exactly what you're going to do.
Right.
But trust me, we're going to do.
Okay.
We need our own experts. And I'm pleased that the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Karen Bass, has convened a national gathering to address this. I'm pleased that the chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, Dr. Shirley Weber, has done similarly. I'm pleased that one of your counterparts, Dr. Samad at Sac State, Professor Chris Towler, is grinding on this issue, and so there's a level of engagement there. Our counterpart to the Dymally Institute, Cal PRI, has lifted on this question as well. And so there's a lot going on. It's a mistake, in my view, to rely on government allocation of resources to get this business done. So philanthropy is engaging. Money is moving from that point of view. The county has its own census count set of resources that's not a part of that larger number
Right.
that you made reference to. So there's
Right.
money all over the place, y'all. The question is, we need to know where it is and go get it, all right? And so I think it's a multi-pronged strategy to pursue it. It's about outreach and hard-to-count communities. It's about having our own experts. We need to have our own posters. Locally, we deal with eviterists because they know what they're doing, and they go to the table and represent our interests. Otherwise, the demographers, the posters, and the like, they shape the discussion and the outcomes of the discussion in a way that are not friendly toward our interest. Therefore, we have to have, again, multi-pronged strategy and engagement. Academic, political, financial. Do you hear me? So this is a sophisticated game. Now, I don't know what the council president was talking about that he's going to do that he can't disclose publicly, but I want to, on the record, disassociate myself from those activities.
And Dr. Samad, just one other thing.
Yeah.
Where we are being counted accurately every 10 years is in prison. But you need to understand, if you're a individual who's been convicted from LA County and you're now doing time in Folsom or San Quentin, that's where those resources are going. So we're working in the state legislature to make sure those resources are reassigned to what your home community was, that home county was. And that's critical. And we need to, as the supervisor said, make sure our voices are heard to challenge that, because it makes no sense for Folsom to get the money if 50% of their population is from Southern California.
Yeah, but part of it is to
Go ahead.
kind of keep you from being in this level of engagement. You understand that when people try to talk over your head and tell you this is not where you're supposed to be, you know, leave that to us. That kind of activity goes on around census to some extent. But we have to demonstrate that we are every bit capable of engaging these questions and can add value to the outcome so that we can leverage our strength. Because this has far-reaching political implications. That's what Senator Bradford was talking about. In other words, our lives matter and our votes count, but they only count if we are counted in connection with the census.
Amen.
That's one we really have to stay woke on.
Stay
All right,
woke.
one last question before we go to the audience. Let's talk about marijuana.
Let's not.
You know it's legal now, Supervisor.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you. Now
There-
we're going to have a fight. We're getting ready to have a fight now.
There's two aspects to this, and Senator Bradford can tell you that I've been engaged. I just really think that there is a major blind spot in marijuana legalization policy, and that is that the underground economy is not going anywhere, and that has manifested itself very quickly. And so the first thing that I'm opposed this part of the question to Senator Bradford, and then this part of the question, the second part of the question, either to City Council President Wesson or you, Supervisor Mark Ridley-Thomas, because I want to deal with this illegal dispensary piece, because I really think that that's the beginning of something very adverse that 20 years from now will have an adverse impact on our community. So let's just talk about the cost of setting up dispensaries and the fact that there are very few minorities at the table. And you introduced legislation, Senator Bradford, for social equity on this piece, and it still seems to be an impediment there. And so how do we fix that and the high cost of licensing that appears to keep our people out of this process?
I wish I had the simple answer, but as you stated, I introduced SB 1294 last year, which is cannabis social equity bill. It's fortunate enough the governor signed that. Governor Jerry Brown signed that last year, and the bill required. Yeah, exactly. The bill required that we establish 4 positions in the Bureau of Cannabis Control to work specifically in helping people of color, people in impacted areas on the war of drugs for the last 40 years, enter this space of legalized cannabis. It also put $10 million on the street for social equity programs. That money was supposed to hit the street on April 1st. 2 weeks before the money hit the street, we looked at where the distribution was going. Almost $4 million of those dollars was going to where? Does anybody know? No. Humboldt County. The weed capital of California, and if not of the nation, where there is no diversity up there in those farms from in the Emerald Triangle. I rushed down to the governor's office, and I said, put a stop to this. And fortunately, Governor Gavin Newsom agreed. And we held the money, and we said, no, you're going to have to do a reallocation of where these dollars are going, because this is not what's the intent of the legislation. And I had a heart-to-heart conversation with the governor, and I says, if we're going to deal with just what we were talking about, the underground economy, the illegal market of cannabis, they always want to refer to it as the black market. I said, if it was a black market, then it'd be people like me in the business. We're not in this business. That's right. And of an industry that's now just a little bit over 18 months in existence, 75% of all license holders, whether you're growing, dispensing, manufacturing, testing, they're white males. And the governor agreed with me. He says we need more diversity in this space. We secured another $30 million in this budget, so now there's $40 million. Last year when I introduced SB 1294, there were only 4 cities in the state of California that had equity and diversity programs: San Francisco, Sacramento, Oakland, and LA. Today there's 15 because they all want some of this money. And we're holding their feet to the fire and says, just don't say it's about diversity and name only to get this money, but really make a strong effort. So I have a bill now, 595, which has fee waivers and license deferrals, and provides technical assistance as well, because the cost of entry is hundreds of thousands of dollars now. We see where landlords are now raising rents on properties that were $2 a square feet. Yeah. Now they're charging as much as $50 to $100 a square feet. You can go down Los Angeles Street right now between 9th and 8th, which used to be all retail. If you notice, it's about 4 buildings that are boarded up right in the middle of Los Angeles Street. There is a cannabis grow going right there in that whole strip, and the business owners on those streets are incensed by it. We just saw in the Sentinel this week the number of illegal dispensaries in Councilman Marquise Harris' district, Dawson's district. And as I've stated, the reason for me fighting for diversity is to help combat the illegal market. And not until we provide a pathway for people to enter this space legally. If we don't, they're going to continue to do what they always did. do the underground economy, and the state will not benefit not one iota from passing legislation. And Prop 64 clearly states that those communities that were impacted over the last 40 years on war and drugs should have opportunity to succeed in this area. So that's what I'm fighting for.
I don't have much to say but this, and I'm going to give it to the president. But, you know, we've discussed several significant policy issues this morning. But I take note of the fact that the point at which the senator got animated is when we start talking about cannabis. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, let us increase that animation.
Thank you.
And people know me know that I've been talking about this for years. And I don't care what personal policy is where it relates to marijuana. But the reality is that this is going to be a business. It is a business. It is big business. It is going to be billions and billions of dollars. And that there needs to be a ability for people of color to be engaged in this business. We can't allow this business to unfold and then 10 years from now march and picket and say we need more black people, or we need more Latinos, or we need more women. So Los Angeles was the first major city to move forward with a social equity program. And I am proud that I played a role in that. With every and any new industry, there's going to be all kinds of problems, especially when there's so much money to be made. We should always remain focused on the individuals that were the most affected by the failed war drugs need to be able to be engaged in this business. And that's what we're doing right now. When we first began these conversations, I think I met one brother who had a dispensary, period. That is changing now. And I will say to you, even with the cost, there are a significant number of African Americans that have partnered and have the resources to move forward and open a business. And just last week in the city of LA, we started to process these social equity licenses. So pleased at the direction that we're going in, but we still have a lot of work to do. Where it relates to the illegal dispensaries, as long as there's a legal business, there's going to always be an illegal business. That's just the way this world was built. So in order for us to protect all of the brothers and sisters who have scraped together every penny that they have to get into this business, we need to come up with a responsible enforcement ability so that they can make the money that they've invested in. We will probably, as time goes by, look at adjusting the taxes and fees and things of this nature, but this business legally is in its infancy stages, and it's going to be a constant battle for a while until we get a handle on it. But we as a community should stay focused on ensuring that we get a piece of this action. And we had to creatively come up with this social equity concept, which is based on areas and arrest, the higher arrests for marijuana offenses. That will give individuals from that area kind of like a step up, because that's, when you look at where the war on drugs was directed, it was directed at us. you know, with all due respect to the Latino community, and I know they have their issues, but the war on drugs, and I want to say President Nixon or Reagan said, it was on us. So it is important that we understand how this business works, and that we have individuals that are in this business, and I'm gonna shut up, but the business is just not these dispensaries.
Exactly.
It's not just the growers. It is a legal component. There are all kinds. This is going to be billions and billions of dollars, but it's going to be kind of like the Wild Wild West for a bit until we get a handle on it. But we are focused on that, and I know that I personally am going to do everything that I can to make sure this social equity program works. And lastly, there are so many people that do not want to see the social equity program work because that's more money for them.
Exactly.
Right.
And so we
Right.
cannot give up on this with its flaws, its hiccups, its pimples. We got to make this work.
And regardless of what your, as this president stated, your views on cannabis, we got to understand the history. The reason cannabis was made illegal in the 1930s was for the criminalization again of black people in this country. Whites were using cannabis at an outstanding rate, and not until 1930 did they decide to make it a Schedule I, and the majority of people who were arrested from 1930 till now have been African Americans. In San Francisco, where African Americans only make up 5% of the population, 70% of the citations for cannabis has been people of color. As I asked, you don't think white folks smoke weed? But we made up 70% of the arrests in San Francisco. So we need to understand the historical aspects. When you look at a movie like Reefer Madness, they said, oh, if you smoke marijuana, you're going to listen to jazz music, you're going to run around with a spear in your hand like natives. Remember, if you haven't seen it, look at that movie. It was all about race, and it's still about race today, because if we were talking about the criminalization of marijuana, it'd be nothing but black folks in this room. But now when we talk about the entrepreneurial opportunities of it, it's all white men.
Consumption rate amongst the races is just about equal. In fact, if it's a little higher, young white boys smoke more weed than anybody else, just slightly. But when you look at the arrests in the African American community is like 6-1.
Well, this is what I will tell you as policymakers. We recognize it always takes regulation time to catch up with the law. But there is an intersectionality between reentry and illegal pot dispensaries. Because these young brothers can't get work, they got convictions, so they can't get licenses, and they're not going to stop selling weed. And that was just in one district. Okay, that was just in District 8, and there are 15 districts. So trust me, this problem is not going away. Pookie is not going to stop doing what he's been doing, you know.
Yeah, but
to
Anthony,
survive.
you're right. We got to get Pookie a legit gig.
That's right.
And so in order to do that,
That's
we've
right.
got to just, right now, we cannot let this issue go.
Right.
Because we have to make sure that we get our piece. And I'm telling you, the Pookies, they're making a decent hourly wage. Mm-hmm. And let's make sure maybe Pookie can be a 10% owner. And those are the kinds of things that we have to do moving forward. And it's just, we are at the beginning of this, and as soon as you think you got everything together over here, then something else comes over here. It is not time for us to give up. It's time for us to get smarter, to get shrewder, to be trained better, and it's time for us to handle it. Because if we allow this to happen and we not get a piece of it now, then shame on all of us.
Okay. All right, let's take a couple of questions before we wrap. Did you have a comment, Supervisor?
I'm afraid that you don't want me to comment on that. I'm sensing that you want me to restrain myself at this point.
Well, no, you with family. Go ahead and say what you're going to say.
feeling slightly discriminated against right now. Just a couple of observations.
Slightly.
One is this. I think the impacts and the benefits of cannabis sales pursuant to the legalization of cannabis have been grossly overstated. And the documentation of such is what it is. Doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities there. It just means that we went way beyond what could be reaped in the market. That's the first observation. The second is legalization of cannabis has been more of a benefit to the underground illicit operations, et cetera, than it has been for those quote-unquote legit ones. And from the perspective of public officials who have an opportunity and responsibility to make sure, among other things, that the law is upheld and enforced, can't co-sign, will not co-sign illicit activity. I ain't gonna do that. It's a problem. It's unsafe, it's unregulated, and I don't take my cues from law enforcement in total on this. I take my cues from public health department, right? So what I have paid close attention to is the radical uptick in cannabis-induced adolescent psychosis, as is being evidenced by one neurologist or one neurological study after the next. So the impacts on young people who are accessing the product is hardly immaterial. Now, does that wipe away all of what the senator and the council president are suggesting? It does not. But we are obliged to pay attention to this because it's real, and they are our kids, and I mean all of our kids, black, brown, yellow, white, name them. Can't ignore that. Shouldn't ignore it. You know why? Because there are costs associated with that, particularly when they are hospitalized. Real talk, right? Real talk. And we have enough challenges managing kids, those of us who are parents and grandparents and so forth already. This ain't a big help. And when we talk about policy, we got to look at it in its totality, not just the market implications in terms of opportunity. Now, I happen to think that if you think someone who was doing what they do in terms of marijuana, cannabis, et cetera, selling for a long time and so forth, if you think they're going to adjust their reality to a legitimate business practice, think twice. It's too much involved in becoming a legitimate business. You got to pay payroll taxes. Got to deal with the IRS. Herb made it the case that you got to deal with minimum wage. I'm just talking real talk to you, all right? So to the extent that all those things are the case, do we really think that someone who can run their program underground is going to come above ground to deal with that, only to have to deal with a whole bunch of government regulation? Real talk, ladies and gentlemen. So, I mean, it's really more complicated than not, right? Now, so am I a little bit inclined to pump my brakes on legalization? Yes, but unapologetic about the need for decriminalization. Nobody who was busted for selling a nickel bag of weed should be spending 10 years in jail. Period. So I think we need to carefully pay attention to getting people's records cleared who now suffer from not. So if you want to know why Pookie can't get hooked up, because he got a record. So tell Pookie to go up to 3965 Vermont and get his record cleared. And then he can get out on the market and do what he needs to do. I mean, you know, he has that monkey off his back. So if you hear me emphasizing a different point than my colleagues are, you're hearing me correct, but it's okay. We have to have these healthy discussions where we differ. Am I right about it? Ain't nobody up here mad with each other because they know I'm right. Thank you very much.
Let's take 2 questions. I know the electeds have a full day, but let's take 2
Bradford
questions.
is mad.
And
I can tell you, Bradford is
so
mad.
I see one over there, and then I see one right here. Can you, Griff, can you give her your question so she can share it? Or you just going to make me take 3, huh? Okay. Where's the microphone? Okay.
Is that Brother Hilton?
Yeah. How you doing, Reverend? Good. Reverend Brother Councilman?
Gentlemen, let me thank you for sharing your information today.
Yeah.
My name is
Tell us your
Gerald.
name, your rank, and your serial number.
My name, I'll tell you. The rest you don't need to know. My name is Gerald Parham. My comment and questions are, for strategically, when we talked about census counts, one of the things that I'm keenly aware of is that the Census Bureau has to send out a census form to every registered address. So strategically, getting folks to register to vote would be one strategy that I think would help in that vein. My other comment is for the senator. You mentioned looking forward to legislation that comes down in terms of rent control, and how there's been some discussion and they wanted 10% and they're looking at 7% or 5%. And I still want to know how that's acceptable when my salary doesn't go up 3% every year.
Again, I'm just saying that's legislation that's working through the California legislature right now. I'm not a big proponent, as I told you, of raising rents. I've talked to enough landowners, landlords are quite content. Again, the original ask was a 10% increase. Now it's at 5% plus CPI that can't exceed more than 10% in a year. So we're trying to cap this as much as possible, but we understand the challenges because, again, it's directly equated to income. We see now where people make $125,000 a year, can't afford to live in a lot of these communities. They need some kind of assistance. So we're trying to fix this problem, but as we say, we're building the plane as we fly.
Hi, I'm
Right, okay. I see a line forming over there. We're already on overtime, so I'm taking 2 questions. And you got in front of the sister that I called on. So these 2 questions, and then the rest of the line have to catch the next session because we have to start the next session. Next session starts at 11:30, right? I have until 11:30. Oh, y'all lucked up
Can
there.
you see me?
All right, then ask your question, brother. Go ahead.
I
But
know
don't
if
walk away with the mic. Hand it.
Well, he told me to come down here to see me.
Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Chief David Hubbard. You guys have been doing an excellent job. Mark Ridley-Thomas, I don't know if you remember me or not, I ran for the 8th District. But also, too, when you're going to start becoming proactive instead of reactive?
Okay, that's one of them questions that we'll be here till Thursday answering. Okay,
2037.
right. Right, okay. I know you weren't trying to answer a question, Councilman Hilton.
My question is with regards to police, sheriff and the police department, with regards to the continuation of assassinations of brothers and sisters. Where is your oversight on that with regards to when no prosecutions happen with police officers, when it's clearly murder, and it's reflective of what's going on nationally, but what oversight do you all have, City Council, Supervisor, with regards to that? That's my question.
Okay, well, in the city of Los Angeles, we just put forth a reform that will afford more citizens to be engaged in the reprimanding of police officers. one of the problems that we've had in the city of LA is not having enough civilian review, civilian oversight. So I want to say we had like 5 black people that they could bring in that would oversee discipline for police officers in the entire city of LA. So we've adjusted that. We're doing a big outreach program so that we can get qualified people of color to sit on these review panels. They used to have requirements where you'd have to have 7 years of experience. We've cut it down to 2, and we've made it more varied experience. And we're also trying to not only to be ethnically diverse, we're trying to be geographically diverse to make sure that we get citizens from throughout the entire city of LA. Now, it's not perfect. There's also going to be more reporting. But one thing that frustrates me is we've been trying to do reform, and sometimes when people can't get everything that they want, they kind of walk away from the table. I'm not that type of person. Every time you talk to me, I'm going to get something. So this is, I think, a very good step in the right direction, because I believe whenever citizens are involved, things are better. You just have to make sure that you have a fair process, that you do it in a way that you can reach out to a diverse group of people. So that's what we're doing with within the city of Los Angeles. Now, I know you guys have some challenges with your top cop.
Yeah, has to be. Has to be. How many of you remember the name of Eula May Love? And so, 78. And so it's been a long, long journey that I've been involved in police accountability work. And it feels as if it's unending. But as I said in my original remarks, I refuse to turn back on what needs to happen. It's a fundamental question of justice. And we ought not abandon that proposition, although it is tough. I mean, be mindful of the fact that law enforcement is the sacred cow of government. And so you got to be clear about what you're going up against. You got to be strapped on and stay in. That's what it is. Let me say for follow-up, Ibert Schultz is here, one of the members on my staff, a Morehouse man. Anybody here mad at Morehouse? He's a Morehouse man. And Michigan law, and worked in the Obama administration. So he ought to be able to get you some help. If you can't get any help from him, holler at me. Thank you. Raise your hand, Ibert. All right, there he is.
Now that's what you call putting a brother on the spot.
Make sure he earns his money today. All right, thank you so much.
Go ahead, brother.
Sir.
Thank you. I thank the elders for permission to speak. This year I completed a session at the United Nations as a delegate for a non-governmental organization. There I learned that the creation story of America traditionally had been a land of freedom, justice, and equality. But in truth, it was freedom, justice, and equality for white male landowners who stole the land and kidnapped the workers. When do we become proactive and start teaching children in the 4th grade the true creation story of America and tell them we've made progress, but we got to work very hard to overcome
Long way to
racism.
go. Long way to
No,
go.
I've been
Long
doing.
way to go.
I will answer that real quick. There is a piece of legislation right now that was held up this week, ethnic studies, to teach our history. And I'm not afraid to say it, our Jewish brothers and sisters was opposed to ethnic studies if they weren't included. As we all know, the people who've been impacted the most in this country is African Americans, Latinos, Asians, and
Native Americans.
and Native Americans. They've had their land stolen, and you need to write the California legislature and say, why was that piece of legislation held? Because Dr. Weber has worked on that to have ethnic studies added to the curriculum.
All right, brothers and sisters, let's give our panel a round of applause. One of the things that we hope you got from this is that your elected officials are part of your community. And so there's two things that you guys need to stay woke on. Do you know LA County will be voting electronically in 2020? They're having a mock election September 28th and September 29th. Go to lavote.net/mock-election, because one of the things they're going to begin to let you do is vote on your phone, vote online. There is a digital divide that could impact our communities adversely. These are the things we have to stay woke on. So again, thank you, Supervisor Mark Ridley-Thomas. Thank you, Senator Steve Bradford. Thank you, Council President Herb Wesson. And we look forward to seeing you guys at next year's Empowerment Summit.
Now, if you want to thank us, let us take these microphones home. Yeah, I want to go home and talk to my wife, right?